You won't find these guns at your local range, in a dusty pawn shop, or even behind bulletproof glass at most museums. These are the ones that used to be everywhere, on duty belts, in glove compartments, tucked inside tackle boxes, but somehow slipped through the cracks of time. They weren't prototypes or military secrets. They were workhorses, icons, weekend companions, and now they're gone. Each one was mass-produced. Each one served its time, got scratched up, passed from one pair of hands to another, and now, in the age of polymer wonders and red dot everything, they've become rare enough to make a seasoned shooter stop and whisper, "Damn, haven't seen one of those in years." This isn't a list of weird museum relics. These are forgotten firearms in the American sense. Guns your grandfather probably owned, your dad might have sold, and now? You're lucky if you can even touch one. Ask any seasoned shooter to name a classic .22, and odds are this one's right near the top. The Colt Woodsman wasn't just another rimfire pistol, it was the gentleman's plinker. This little slab of American steel was built for pure pleasure. It's not tactical, it's not flashy, it just works, like a watch made for a man who reads Hemingway and smokes a pipe while he shoots squirrels. The Woodsman was in production from 1915 to 1977, and for a good stretch of the 20th century, it was the .22 pistol to own. Smooth trigger, slim grip, crisp adjustable sights, everything about it screamed craftsmanship. You didn't just shoot this thing, you bonded with it. The kind of gun you'd take to the range, burn through a brick of ammo, then wipe down like it was an heirloom, because it probably was. It wasn't just a range toy either. The OSS used suppressed Woodsman pistols during World War II for covert work. Ernest Hemingway reportedly kept one close, not because he needed to, but because he appreciated fine tools. And if you've ever shot one, you'll understand exactly why. So why did a pistol that popular quietly vanish from store shelves? Colt pulled the plug in 1977 and never brought it back. It wasn't due to a lack of fans, more likely a shift in market demand, plus rising production costs. Over time, people moved on to cheaper, polymer frame .22s that could be tossed in a tackle box without a second thought. What exactly makes the Woodsman so desirable among collectors today? It's the balance, the feel, and the fact that even after 50 years, it can still punch dime-sized groups at 25 yards. That's the kind of quality you don't just forget. You chase it, and when you finally find it, you hang on to it. Because once you've held one, every other .22 starts to feel like it's trying just a little too hard. I'll tell you something about the Remington 600. It was ugly in a way that made you love it more. Not the kind of rifle you posed with for a magazine cover, but the kind you tossed behind the truck seat, forgot for a month, then pulled out and still dropped a buck at 80 yards with, and you'd grin while doing it. This little bolt action was short, light, and weird as hell. That plastic rib on the barrel made it look like a pump shotgun from outer space, and the laminated stock felt like it belonged in a 1970s furniture catalog. But you know what? It pointed fast, cycled smoothly, and it was scary accurate for what it was. They chambered it in everything from .222 to .350 Rem Mag, because Remington was either crazy or brilliant that year, maybe both. They only made 600 from 64 to 68. 4 years, and then poof. Nobody wanted it back then because it didn't look serious. Some guys complained about the plastic trigger guard or the bolt lift. Some worried about slam fires. What they didn't realize was that this rifle had everything we'd end up loving 30 years later. Short barrels, lightweight, handy as hell. Where can anyone expect to find a factory original Model 600 now with its rib intact, stock untouched, and no backyard gunsmith nightmares? In most cases, you can't. These rifles have all but vanished into private collections, and the few remaining examples are either heavily modified or quietly traded among old-timers who won't let them go. The Model 600 isn't a beauty queen. It's the ex-Marine with a crooked nose who still runs 5 miles before sunrise and keeps a K-bar in his sock drawer. Reliable, dangerous, and absolutely unforgettable. And now, practically extinct in the wild. If you've ever picked up an H&K P7, you probably did the same thing I did, stared at it like a confused raccoon holding a toaster. Where's the safety? What's this front strap doing? And why the hell does it feel so dense, like it's made out of neutron star metal? Then you squeeze the grip. Click. The gun cocks. The trigger wakes up. And suddenly you realize you're holding a piece of German engineering so precise it makes Swiss watches look like cereal box toys. The P7's squeeze cocking system is genius. You squeeze to arm it, and the second you let go, it's safe. No levers, no safeties, no hammer to thumb. It's fast, it's silent, and it's safe enough that you'd let your nervous uncle carry one, if he could afford it. And that's where the P7 hit a wall. It was stupid expensive to make. Every one of them was like building a BMW by hand with dental tools. HK had to machine and hand-fit parts to tolerances tighter than a senator's re-election budget. The gun was flawless, but the price made people flinch harder than the recoil ever could. Eventually, in 2008, HK gave up. No more P7s. The factories moved on. Plastic took over the world, but the legend stuck around. Nowadays, you might spot a police trade-in floating around a gun show, but good luck finding one in excellent condition without coughing up enough cash to buy a cig and a Glock and still have change for ammo. Even the magazines are collectible now, and the cleaning tools? Forget it. People hoard those like woo-wah-froo bayonets. So why do some of us still hunt for one? Because the P7 isn't just another pistol. It's a mechanical flex, a range toy for people who appreciate weird genius, a carry gun for folks who don't want to be like anyone else. It's not just about how it shoots. It's about how it makes you feel like you're in on a secret, and everyone else just brought a rental Glock to the party. The Colt Diamondback wasn't just a revolver, it was an attitude. It had that smooth, satin finish, ventilated rib, and just enough swagger to turn heads at the range without saying a word. Chambered in 22 LR and 38 Special, it looked like a mini python, but it had a charm all its own. And back in the day, if you walked into a police locker room or detective's office, odds were good you'd find one sitting in a drawer, probably next to a worn leather holster and a pack of unfiltered Camels. The Diamondback was introduced in 1966, and from the start, it was never meant to be a budget gun. Colt built it with care. Adjustable sights, full-length underlug, smooth DA pull, everything tight, crisp, and damn near perfect. This wasn't the service revolver you tossed in the glove box. This was the revolver you bought when you wanted to feel like a character in a 70s crime flick and still hit bottle caps at 15 yards. Why did Colt stop making it in 1988? The answer, like most things with Colt, came down to money and timing. The company was shifting resources, the revolver market was shrinking, and semi-autos were taking over. The Diamondback wasn't cheap to produce, and it never came back once production ended, unlike the Python, which got a reboot decades later. So where can someone even hope to find a real Diamondback today? One in factory condition, untouched since Reagan was in office? The truth is, you probably can't. They've dried up almost entirely outside of high-end auctions, and even those listings are getting rarer by the year. Most survivors are locked away in safes, and the rest were either shot to death or sold off decades ago by people who had no idea what they had. The nickel-plated versions? Good luck. They're basically unicorns. Even beat-up 22s now command prices that would have made a 1970s cop spit out his coffee. The Diamondback isn't just rare, it's iconic. It oozes character. It's what happens when a working man's revolver gets dressed up for a night out, then never comes home because it knew it was too damn pretty for the job. The Ruger Security 6 is the kind of revolver that makes you wonder why they ever stopped making it. It was built for hard use, full steel frame, 357 Magnum chambering, and internals that could take a beating and still shoot true. If you wanted a gun that could live in your truck, sit in a drawer for 10 years, then fire all 6 rounds like nothing happened, this was the one. Introduced in 1971, the Security 6 was Ruger's answer to the Smith & Wesson K-frame revolvers that ruled police holsters. It was stronger, simpler to service, and usually cheaper. Cops loved it. So did private security, truckers, ranchers, pretty much anyone who needed a reliable sidearm that didn't care about scratches or sand. What led Ruger to retire in 1988? The company shifted gears toward the GP100 series, which was beefier and more modular. While that line had its own strengths, it never quite carried the same no-nonsense personality. The Security 6 wasn't flashy. It didn't try to impress. It just worked, and it worked forever. Where can shooters find one now in good shape? Not easily. These guns weren't babied. They were used, hard. Most have wear nicks, or worse. How realistic is it to find an untouched Security 6 today? One that hasn't been reblued, bubba'd, Or turned into a nightstand project? The odds are slim to none. These guns were worked hard and stored harder. Clean examples with original grips and factory finish have become nearly impossible to locate. If they're out there, they're buried deep in private collections or passed quietly between collectors who know exactly what they've got. The Security 6 isn't glamorous, but neither is a reliable friend who always shows up when you call. And if you ask me which one I'd rather have at 3 in the morning when something goes bump in the night, it sure as hell isn't the nickel-plated sissy gun sitting pretty in the safe. The Remington 7400 was never flashy. It didn't have a fancy barrel rib, or some secret military origin, or a grip that made you feel like a space marine. What it had was a job, and it did it for damn near every deer hunter I knew growing up. You saw these rifles in tree stands, in gun racks at the gas station, and in every issue of Field and Stream from 1982 to 1999. It was a blue-collar semi-auto, plain and simple, chambered in good old .30-06, 270, 308, the stuff that filled ammo shelves back when that meant something. It had a reputation for being reliable. If you cleaned it, and if you didn't, well, it would let you know real quick. The action would jam tighter than a rusted trailer hitch, and you'd spend more time cussing than hunting. They started making it in 1981, and by the early 2000s it was gone. Remington replaced it with the Model 750, which never had the same following. Most folks didn't even notice the 7400 was missing, until they tried to find one. Where do things stand now? These rifles are ghosts, not because they were rare back then, but because they got used, hard. They rode in trucks, leaned against barn walls, got dropped in creeks. They weren't collector guns, they were tools. And when tools break, they get tossed or patched together with whatever parts are on hand. What are the odds of finding a clean, all-original 7400 with a walnut stock and a mint bore? At this point, you'd probably have better luck finding an unfired VCR. Most of the ones left either look like they've seen a decade of war or have been Frankensteined into something no gunsmith wants to touch. The Model 7400 didn't disappear because it was unreliable or unpopular. It vanished because it was used hard by regular people, day after day, until most of them were either worn out, lost, or trashed. By the time anyone cared to collect them, there weren't many left worth saving. Among those who study combat pistols, the Heckler & Koch P7M13 holds a place of quiet reverence. It was never widely issued, never mass-produced in American factories, and never found its way into civilian holsters in large numbers. But those who know what it is, and what it isn't, recognize the P7M13 for what it became, one of the most mechanically unique, over-engineered, and commercially doomed pistols ever to leave Germany. The P7M13 was introduced in the early 1980s as an upgrade to the original P7. It featured a double-stack magazine holding 13 rounds of 9mm, which made it competitive on paper with contemporaries like the Browning High Power and Beretta 92. Its squeeze-cocking mechanism, gas-delayed blowback system, and fixed barrel delivered phenomenal accuracy and safety. In practical terms, the shooter could carry it chambered, completely inert, and still fire instantly with a firm squeeze of the grip. This made it a dream for some elite units, and an enigma to everyone else. The design required such tight machining tolerances that mass production was inefficient and costly. Every P7M13 was essentially a hand-fitted pistol. Retail prices were high. Magazine availability was limited. Holster support was nearly non-existent. The gun was also heavier and wider than most of its peers, a tough sell to the average user who favored capacity over cleverness. By the early 2000s, production had slowed to a trickle. By 2008, it ended. Today, the P7M13 is nearly extinct outside of private vaults, curated collections, and the occasional European police surplus drop, which rarely includes this variant. In the United States, clean examples with matching mags and boxes routinely break into the $4,000+ range. Magazines alone, if original, command over $200 each. The P7M13 didn't fail because it was flawed. It failed because the market wasn't ready for something that smart, that refined, and that expensive. Now, it serves as a quiet reminder that some designs were never meant for mass adoption, only for those who truly understood them. These aren't just guns that vanished from shelves. They're artifacts of a different era, built with metal, soul, and sometimes just enough weirdness to make them unforgettable. And while the world moved on to polymer frames and optics-ready everything, these classics slipped away, not with a bang, but with a quiet nod and a worn finish. Some people collect watches, some collect cars, but for those of us who know what these old shooters represent, design, grit, and a different kind of pride, the hunt never really ends. What about you? Have you ever owned one of these legends? Or maybe you've got a story, or a ghost gun in your family safe that deserves a mention. Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. Thanks for sticking around. Subscribe if you're into guns with history, guns with character, and guns that actually meant something. I'll see you in the next one.